Well, I was fortunate to have the chance to meet him. And when I first met him, it was to do a video for a gallery in Beijing. So day one, first minute I met him, my camera was already rolling. So I feel like the context for knowing him was always as someone who was trying to document him. It was for an exhibition of the photographs from the decade that he lived in New York in the 1980s. And for me, it was a great entry point to WeiWei. I didn't know much about him when I first met him. Just a little, that he was a well-known artist, that he had a very popular blog where he spoke out about things including the Olympics. And after I made that video for the exhibition, I just felt like I wasn't done with really getting to know him. I felt like he was charismatic enough that a 90-minute movie would be worth everyone's time to kind of watch him. But it's really, the whole project is a kind of an investigation of, for me, of sort of trying to find out more about what he's like and what's going to happen to him. I really didn't set out knowing what this movie was gonna be. I think I just had these vague concepts, like I wanted it to be good. And what I mean by good is that I wanted it to be a really sort of in-depth look, like a character profile in some ways. I'd seen that there was a lot of coverage of WeiWei, and there was getting to be more, but I always found, people were trying to peg him as a dissident, or they were kind of getting things wrong. Say he designed the Olympic Stadium, which is kind of a shorthand for what really happened. I also think that besides just thinking that he's a good character, the only other kind of vague thing I had was to see what he's doing, his activities online and his activism and the way he talks and the way he thinks. I just felt like it would also broaden people's thinking about China itself. And I really wanted it to be the kind where I spent the time with him and saw what happened, and so that you couldn't plan it out from the beginning. Yeah, it was. I think I worked with an editor in New York, and I wanted to edit with someone who didn't have a China background. It took more time that we had to put subtitles on a lot of footage, but I would sort of cut down to the selects and what I thought was important towards the story. So we weren't subtitling everything, and I had lots of transcripts. And yeah, we kind of worked on the structure. And I think it really works because it's trying to do so much, because so much happened over the years that I filmed with him. And also his biography is like so rich, It really encompasses like the whole history of China through his biography. And I really, in the end, what I really wanted to do was let the different biography points, it wasn't going to start when he was born and go till the end, so to let them be reveals along the way. And I think that also adds drama, because if you didn't know about his father, you didn't know about his time in New York, you didn't know about his son, there's like extra drama just in telling you like the backstory, so. I definitely wanted to look into how they're kind of combined, or whether there was a distinction, or kind of a lot of those questions, but that question fell away from me pretty quickly, because I think I did pretty quickly see that it's kind of all one outlook, and that his art is sort of about, and his whole history of doing art is about communication and documentation and having new conversations. I think what really interested me also was really a very, on a personal level, like what kind of person who deals with issues of fake and real, and who's willing to touch these very taboo subjects. I kind of wanted to see, what is his motivation for this, and when is he genuine and when is he not? And I feel like the film I made is kind of the results of that, which is, I think that he is quite genuine about the universal values that he talks about in the film. Right. It was around the middle of 2010 when I just started to feel like there was a point working on the film where I really, for a long time, where I was so nervous, do I even have a movie here? Like, am I following the right things? And everything I'd miss, I'd be so worried about, like, oh, I wasn't there that day, or oh, he said this really good thing, but the mic wasn't, on, or whatever kind of things it was. And it was in 2010 when I really started to feel like I had so much material that it didn't even matter about the things I missed because there was already so much to fit into the film. And so with his Tate show coming up, I felt like I'm going to go to the show in London, and with the aim also of trying to film some things that could feel like an ending. Because I always knew from the beginning, I didn't know how long I was going to film him, but I knew that I wasn't going to capture like the end, you know, that his life was always going to go on. He was not close to being done. And so I was always kind of comfortable with it being sort of an arbitrary point where I was going to have to end the movie. I think when the Tate show, right when it was done and I went back to New York, I immediately went back to China because they announced they were going to demolish his Shanghai studio, which was, demolition was a storyline I really wanted to have in the film because it's a really big issue in China. Whether you have a mansion or you have a shack, everybody's concerned that the government can just, you know, arbitrarily, you know, or at short notice demolish your home for a different development. Plus I knew it would be very dramatic to see that studio, and I'd been there several times. So my idea for the ending was quickly like, okay, maybe this is a postscript, or maybe it's something like that. And then we continued on editing, and when his detention came, I mean, that was really when I started to see, wow, this period of time really is an important period of time. It's kind of by coincidence. I didn't know that this was going to happen, but that these years are really, you know, marking the rise and sort of a stopping point of something, and what's going to happen afterwards is going to be the next chapter with him. This is my first film, my first feature film, and I've been learning a lot about everything that happens when you make a feature film, because I think when I started, not only did I not know what would happen, but I'm not sure I really had any thought of where the film was going to be shown or what was going to happen with it. But my experience before that was in journalism. I had a lot of experience in radio journalism, even in my college years, and that was primarily what I did in Beijing, but I also did some video and television journalism. I also got my first few years in China, when I was trying to get these jobs where I would have to speak Chinese on the job. I worked in the film industry. I was the assistant to, on one project I was the assistant to the lead actress in a Jackie Chan Jet Li movie, and so a lot of my Chinese was learned on set, on location, over 6 months with this young, very famous Chinese actress. So I would actually say that was like a really good inside look at a feature film. I think my journalism experience really informed what I wanted to do with documentary, which was to really take the time to get really into a story and to see what was going to happen and to have a longer period of time to tell it. But I also think a lot of things about just how film works itself I learned by being on sets like that. I think some of the biggest advice I have learned is that don't wait for permission to do something. That I think that in documentary, which is really where I have experience, I mean, if you feel like a story is meant to be told, to just start telling it and to start filming, because you never know what's going to happen. And the truth is, at least from my experience, you know, I'm very fortunate to have a film now that's going to have theatrical releases in many countries around the world, but I had no clue what I was, you know, necessarily, where it was going to go, what was going to happen with it, how I was going to do it. I don't know what made me think I could even make a movie, but it's like when you, I think, stay dedicated to having a good product and you feel like a story needs to be told, just don't wait for, you know, just start, and things will, you know, things will happen if you want them to. The film was financed through a mixture of grants and private money and crowdfunding, so it was really a total mixture. In the beginning it was more from the art world in New York actually, and also from foundations that had to do with things in Asia, like the Luce Foundation. Right when we came back to New York and we started applying for things like Sundance funding, other film funding, and we launched a Kickstarter campaign, it became quite a coincidence that we put all those applications in, we started our crowdfunding campaign, and within weeks, or in some cases days, then his detention came. And so I do think that it raised the profile, certainly for the film, but a lot of that stuff was kind of, we were already in the process of applying for anyway.